Hello, Flosstube. This is Boss Daughter, aka Catherine, and today I'll be doing a Stitch With Me video on how I do my Heaven and Earth Designs project. So, there are 3 rules to doing this, and you don't have to follow these rules, but and I don't know, there's lots of people who do lots of different ways for this, but this is the way that I found that works for me, and I really like it, and I've been doing it for 10 years. So it's worked really, really well. So what you can do with these projects, you can do them like a normal cross stitch project if you want. You can just do the normal way where you pick one color and you do, the whole section of that color, but I think I would lose my mind if I did it that way on this. It's just too big and it's too complicated. So what I use, I don't know, I call it the snake method. Somebody else might call it something else. It's not an original idea. My mom got it off of like a chat board when we very first started doing these, so take it for what you will, but this is what I do. So rule number 1 is that you have to have it gridded. You can use whatever you want to grid it. You can use a marking pencil. I just use like a regular lead pencil. You can use counting pens, you can use basting stitches, you can do whatever you want to make the grid. Just make the grid because it will save your life. Usually what I do is I just grid out one page at a time. So right now, since this is the very end of the row, I've gridded all the way. This is like the one little partial page, but you can see where there's 2 lines here together. And so I've gridded all the way to, this is the end of the page. And then I made another line that's the end of the actual 10 by 10 block that's on the next page, so that I know that that's the end. Anyways, that'll become a little bit more clear later. So that's rule number 1. You have to have a grid and it will save your life. Rule number 2 is pick a path and stay on it. Just like a haunted forest, pick a path and stay on it, because when you stray from the path, that's when things get hairy. So what I mean by that is, let me get this straight a little bit, here we go, is you can go, my path is that I go across like this and then down and across and down and across. So I kind of snake back and forth like this, all the way down to the bottom. And then I move to the next one and I snake all the way up to the top, and then I do the same thing over and over and over again, so that I'm always moving to the right. So when I do my lines, I come across on my lines and go down this way and then down and then over back across this way. And you'll see it a little bit as I start to stitch. But that's rule number 2, is you have to stick to a path. Because if you stick to a path, then you'll always know where you're going, and it will always spit you out to the new place where you need to be, to the next section where you need a stitch. So my lines, since I go across, I always start on the right side and I come down and I come back to the right side. Since I always do that, when I get down to the bottom, it will spit me out on the right side so that I can continue to move to the right. You can do it if you wanted to go like across like this and then down like this and then across like this. That's totally an option. You just have to make sure that when you get all the way down to the end of the page that it's going to spit you out over on this side so you can keep going. So I'm just the most comfortable going down and then back up and down and up. So rule number 3 is when you're parking your stitches, always, always, always park it in the same spot on the stitch. So like my stitches go like this. My stitches go like this first, this direction first. So I always park my threads in the bottom right hand corner. So for instance, this stitch that I just did, the next one, you do the stitch that's that color and then you go down your path. I'm going to go down my path like this and down my path like this and look for the next stitch that's this color that I just did. And it looks like, just look here, looks like it's right over here is where that next one is going to go. I looked all the way down this path and then I looked all the way up this path, and the next time this color shows up is right here. So I'm going to pull it up so I know which square it is, and I'm going to put it in the bottom right hand corner of that square, because it always has to go in the same corner. That's the word I'm looking for. It has to go in the same corner every time. So I'm going to pull it up in the bottom right hand corner And then I'm going to pull my needle off and leave it there, because I don't need that color again until I get down my path all the way up to that spot. So then I pick up the next one, usually use my needle to kind of pick that out from the rest of them. And I thread it on there. So now that you know the 3 rules, there are a few ways that you can have a shortcut, because I know that you're looking at me like, well, that means I have to rethread every single stitch. No, you don't. There's a few things that you can do to make your life a little bit easier. So the next one, I just did the stitch, and now it's gonna get parked. I'm just looking down my path here to see when the next one is. Looks like it's right here, down in the corner. I'm gonna put it in the bottom right-hand corner, and I'm gonna pull it up. So then, this next one, I get a little bit of a break, and there are 2 stitches here. So then, when you're looking at all these threads, it's not so overwhelming, because I know that each and every one of those threads is parked in the bottom right-hand corner of whatever stitch it's supposed to be on. So I know when I get to that stitch, if I'm looking in the bottom right-hand corner, that's the right color of the right thread. So then I'm gonna do this stitch, and I'm gonna do the next one. Hooray, got 2 in a row. Some of the squares will be really mean to you and make you do confetti all over the place, and some of them will be a lot more generous with the stitches together, just depending on what you're working on. And the next one for this color is right at the end here. So what I could do is I could just pull up on the bottom right hand corner and just leave it there, but because it's at the very end of the row and it's not going to block any other stitches, any other threads, I can just do this one on the end, because it won't get in the way of any other stitches. So I'm going to do this corner one, and then the next one after that is down here. So I'm going to pull it up in the bottom right hand corner of the next one. Now, kind of the same thing with this next one. This color, there's only one on the official path right here. And the next one is right here next to this corner one that we just did. Now normally I try not to go too far ahead in the path, because if you do too many stitches too far ahead, then you end up having to travel over the back over stitches that you've already done. When I'm traveling over the back, I try to travel as much as possible over blank fabric, so that when you keep going down the path, it will just, any traveling that you have on the back, in fact, I'll show you. I have a little bit of traveling, but all the traveling that I have is over blank fabric, so that as I keep going down the path, it will just get covered over by the full coverage, so you don't have any threads hanging out in the back. So since the next one is right here, and since it's kind of also kind of over in this corner and is not going to get in the way of anybody else, I'm just going to do this stitch too. Let's see, where's the next one? It's down next to this other one. I'm going to find the bottom right hand corner of the next place it's going to show up on my path, and it's right there. Now, you just start the next color. Yep. Okay. Forgot. This is a new one. Just gonna grab this thread really quick. Just drop my scissors down the couch. Oh well. Dig those out in a minute. So it is quite a bit of rethreading. And so if that's something that's really difficult for you, then maybe this is not the best method for you. But if you don't mind the rethreading too much, and it really does get easier, as you do it more and more and more, you just don't even think about it after a while. So if it doesn't bother you that much, if it's like the most painful thing in your world, then maybe don't do this. But if it doesn't bother you that much, or if it's kind of medium, try it out and see if you like it. I'm gonna do this one right here. And then the next place this shows up on my path, remember what square I'm on here for a second, is right down here. So if I was traveling, I'm generally traveling in a downward direction, so I don't have to worry about crossing over already stitched threads. Like for instance, this is going to come down here. But if I looked all the way up the path and it was all the way up in here somewhere, so over on the back it was going like this, I would turn it over and I would sneak my needle underneath those threads on the back so that it's underneath these threads, and then it can travel over the blank thread or big blank fabric to go up here. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if that doesn't make sense and I can give a better explanation, but for right now I'm traveling downwards with this one. The next one on the path is right here, so I don't have to worry about traveling over those already stitched threads. And now we get another little break with these two. Now this one, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit on this because as I'm looking at this color, I'm noticing that, so obviously we like doing as many of the same color stitches as possible just to make our lives easier. So what I'm actually going to do on this one is I'm going to leave this for now. You can deviate from the path just a little bit as long as it makes your life easier. Just don't go too far or you will hate everything and you'll rage quit this project. And I don't want you to do that. I want you to love this project. Whatever heaven and earth design you're working on, I want you to love it. So we're going to actually come to this thread down here because I know that this stitch, and a few of these down here are the same color. And I want to do all those same color at the same time just for the sake of ease. So we're going to do this one right here, because I know it's right in between two of this other color. And I'm also going to do this stitch down, let's see, there's this one, and then there's two over this one. We're going to do this stitch as well. Because, and I'll show you why in a minute. Okay, so then the next one for this, I'm just going to finish up this stitch. I usually like to look ahead after I've done the first leg of the stitch, because then I can tell which way to do the second leg. That doesn't make any sense. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense to you, but basically, so I'm not traveling or doing anything crazy. So now that I have these two on there, now this one is also in between two of the other stitches of the same color. Just looking ahead on my pattern a little bit so I can do this one. And this one, the next place it shows up is right down below here. Here we go. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Okay, here's the other reason for the gridding. If you're going far away, if I didn't have any of this gridded and I was trying to travel over, if the next place that this color showed up was 2 rows over, if I have it all gridded out, then all I have to do is count over 2 rows, and I only have to count within that 10 by 10 square to figure out where that needs to be parked. If I didn't have this all gridded out and it was just blank and I was trying to count over like 30 stitches to park that, then you're gonna want to die. Like, just don't do it. Don't do it to yourself. Just grid it out however you feel the most comfortable. But that's why it's rule number 1. So now that we have these 3 right here, we can take this thread and fill it in. Usually my cap is 1. I'll go over, like, I'll do 1 stitch. I'll travel over the back over 1 stitch, but I don't like to travel over 2. But you can if you want to. If traveling over 2 stitches together doesn't bother you, then go for it. But now I can stay on my path, but I can do all of these stitches of the same color together. So I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do the one right next to it. And then on the official path, I've already done, once I finish this one, I've already done this stitch and this stitch. So now the next one would be this one down here in the corner. So I'm going to finish this stitch, and then I'm going to come down here to this one. And on this line, and it goes all the way down. This one, this one, this one, and this one are all the same color. So now that I've done these little onesies, I can do this color all the way down. And I could have done that the opposite way too. I could have come down here and I could have checkerboard. It's basically, it's kind of like a checkerboard, like in checkers where you jump over the other pieces, but it has to be like every other one to do that big chain move, right? So it's kind of like that. You jump over all of these every other one. So sometimes the pattern works out nicely like that to where you can kind of checkerboard these. So I could have done it the opposite way to where I came down and did all of these that were the same color, every other one, and then I could go back and do the others, but then you're traveling over the back over more done stitches. I don't know, I just prefer this way. I like filling it in. I like doing all the onesies that are out in the middle in between two stitches of the same color and then filling it in with the fill-in color. Hopefully that also makes sense. I'm kind of rambling at this point, so hopefully let me know if this video makes sense. Let me know if I've made a total garbled mess of this and I can re-explain it, but hopefully it's coming together for you. Alright, so then the next place this is going to be parked at is right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right there. There it is. Alright, and then this is sitting right here where we parked it from earlier. It's in the bottom right hand corner because I always know it's in the bottom right hand corner. So I can just pick that up and keep going. I'm trying to think if there's any other rules I'm supposed to tell you, but those are the three cardinal rules of not losing your mind when doing a heaven and earth design. Just as a recap, always grid out your section so you know where you're going, and you know it also helps you to remember kind of where you're at on the page. Like if you're looking at the page, I think this page starts over right about here. If you're looking at the rest of this page as a whole and you know that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 lines to the end of the page, it's easier to keep track of what you're looking at as far as when you're looking back from the pattern to your stitching, because then you can kind of be oriented. If you know that this is the page, then you know that you're looking at about this section of the page, so you don't get lost quite as easily as you're going back and forth. Second rule is pick a path and stick to it. I don't care what your path is. I don't care if you're going side to side or up and down or whatever. Pick a path that makes sense and stick to it. Another thing with that is when I get all the way down to the bottom, this very bottom row only has 3 lines on it. So if my lines that go back and forth, it only spits me out on the right if I'm doing an even number of lines. So when I get down to this very bottom line, I'll do the top line across like this, and then when I get down to these bottom 2 lines, I'll do them together. So I'll kind of go back and forth with, let me pull my needle up here and I'll show you. Next place in fact, up here where we're doing this other stitch, it's going to be down here. This is another stitch that's in between. And you'll kind of start to notice that you push your threads a certain way. Like these are all up here so that they stay out of my way, and these are all down here so they stay out of my way. This next stitch is right here, and I'm going to go ahead and do it because it's in between 2 other stitches that are the same color. And then I'm going to park it over here somewhere, over here. Alright, now that I've got my needle and I can show you, down here on this bottom one, I'll go across this top row like this, and then when I get down here, I'll do these 2. I'll kind of go up and down, back and forth like this, so that when I get to the end of it, I've done both lines at the same time, but it's still spitting me out over here so that I can start over on this next square. And then on this one, it's kind of nice because you can go up, and then it spits me out over here, and then I can go double back, and then I'm at the top of this. So you kind of just go back and forth, if that makes sense. What was the other thing I just thought of? I thought of another rule. I can't remember what it was now. But now I've got 2 more of these little X's right here. So you can see that I've made my way down and now I'm making my way back. You can kind of see how the path is coming together. I've stuck to it mostly, but stick to the path mostly. That's really what the rule is, I guess. Oh, and then rule number 3 as a recap is Always park in the same corner. Always, always, always park in the bottom right-hand corner. You can park in whatever corner you want. Just make sure it's the same one every time. Because otherwise, if you're parking in different corners, then you have no idea which square it's supposed to go to, and it will ruin your life and you'll hate it. So don't do that. And I just remembered another thing. If you make a mistake, like up in here, and you realize that you did the wrong color for a couple of stitches up here or something because you got your lines crossed somewhere, do not try and pull out your stitching to go back and fix it. It's not worth it. It will ruin your life. Don't do it. What I recommend doing instead is picking up a brand new thread and going back to those ones that you messed up. Unless you've messed up like the entire block, then that might be worth going back. But if it's just like a few stitches that you accidentally did the wrong color, just get that right color and just stitch over it. Do not try and undo and go back and do it. Don't do it. Just take a new thread and stitch over it and pull the thread tight and you won't even notice, and it'll be the right color. And with a lot of these, if it's pretty close, it doesn't matter, because once you step back and you look at it as a whole, it doesn't matter. So just stitch over it. Do not try and rip out your threads and go back to fix it, because it's not worth it. Just stitch over it and you'll be fine. Trying to think if there's anything else. But that's the basic method. You kind of just pick a line and you go for it. And it's different. It takes a while to get used to because it's a different way of stitching. It took me a while to kind of just sink into it just because it's different, but it's really worth it. And like I said, I've been doing this method for 10 years and it's really worked well, because all you have to do, you're not worried about getting lost out in the middle of somewhere and you're not trying to figure out where you're at with the pattern or anything like that. You can just go down the path. You know exactly where you're at on the page, you know exactly where you're at on the path, and you can watch TV or you can do whatever. It's really nice because it's kind of relaxing, because I don't have to be counting all over the place. It still has a little bit of counting, but I'm not counting any huge distances. I'm just working my way down one line at a time. And so it might take longer because you're rethreading so often. Like one of these 10 by 10 squares takes me about an hour for about 100 stitches. So I don't know. I've never done a time comparison on which way is faster. If going cross country may be faster for some people, but also I don't want to hate my life when I work on this project, and I feel like if I went cross country I would hate my life doing this project. So this works for me, even if it's a little bit slower. It keeps it more organized so I don't hate it. Some of the squares do go faster. If it's a lot of the same color, it definitely does go faster, because you can do a lot more squares of the same color at the same time. When you have a lot of different colored squares together, then obviously you have to rethread a lot more. But it's really not bad. You can kind of settle into it and it's fine. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you've done a different way that you really, really like. This is my way. And I will post this on my mom's channel. I don't have any plans currently to have my own channel, but so far I'll post this on my mom's channel, and if I get my own channel, you guys will be the first to know. And I think I'm going to go ahead and end it. Again, this is Catherine, aka Boss Daughter. My mom is Brenda, Handwork Maniac on Flosstube. Thanks, guys.